This is Keys to the Shop, episode 379, an encore episode of How to Deliver Difficult Feedback with Tom Henschel. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio, and I am your host here at Keys to the Shop, and I'm really happy to have you along. I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show. Just go to wherever you get your podcasts and hit subscribe and share these episodes and share the show with your friends, with your team, your coworkers. A great way to do that is simply to share what you're listening to on social media as well. Tag Keys to the Shop. You can also follow us on Instagram at Keys to the Shop. Now, did you know that Keys to the Shop is also a consulting company? That's right. Keys to the Shop Consulting works with independent coffee shop owners and operators to help them gain control of their daily operations, manage cafe growth, develop themselves as leaders, and truly care for and retain their staff and customers, all in the name of creating a sustainable and thriving coffee business and helping you get joy in the process. You get one-on-one guidance to help guide you as you work through the many questions and challenges of running a coffee shop. If you want to learn more, you can just schedule a free discovery call with me by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com, and we can talk all about how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Again, that email for Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, years ago, I was introduced at a coffee show to something that was pretty new on the market and was just starting to hear rumors about. And to me, it was really fascinating. And over the years now, it has become just a phenomenon in terms of technological breakthroughs for coffee brewing. I'm talking about the ground control Cyclops brewer from Voga Coffee. It's a very interesting looking brewer with the glass on top and the sleek design. It is very engaging. But once you get past that conversation starting design element, you realize that this is revolutionizing coffee brewing as we know it. The SCA award-winning technology in the ground control brewer gives you the ability to control the extraction of an incredible range of flavors in your coffee. So the absolute best from your coffee will be able to be displayed in every batch of coffee. So batch brew coffee now has leveled up with a ground control, but it's not just for brewing batch coffee. The extraction potential of this machine allows you to create tea, batched iced lattes, batch cold brew, tea concentrates. There's all sorts of applications that people all over the world have used the ground control for. Check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee for more information. I truly think if you're looking to actually differentiate yourself through the quality of your product and gain more efficiency on the bar and open up avenues for profitability, the ground control is a great choice for you. I think you should look into getting it in your cafe. Again, for more information on the ground control Cyclops brewer, go visit them at groundcontrol.coffee. It's always great when you can depend on something. And when you have tools that just work, it makes the biggest difference in terms of how well you can serve your customers. The same goes for ingredients. And when we're talking about quality and reliability for performance with plant-based beverages, there's no better option for your coffee bar than the Barista Series from Pacific. The Barista Series was created for baristas and tested by baristas all over the world before any of their lineup actually makes it into the market. That's why it performs so well. It stands up to the heat from steaming, produces awesome silky texture, great for latte arts, and then also, and you would say most importantly, the balance of the beverage, the taste, really is focused on the coffee. So it's a harmony of flavors and it performs so well. I encourage you to check them out over at pacificfoodservice.com and get samples in your store today. Again, if you're looking for dependability, quality, and the best offering for your customers' plant-based needs, I think it really does need to be the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today we have an encore episode for you, and this one is a really great conversation with our friend Tom Henschel. And Tom has been a frequent guest on the show. Over 25 years, Tom has helped hundreds of senior leaders achieve the look and sound of leadership, which is also the name of his amazing podcast. In addition to coaching executives, he facilitates team events and delivers highly interactive trainings in the areas of effective communications, presentations, and influence skills. Tom's podcast, The Look and Sound of Leadership, like I mentioned, has been airing since 2008 and is consistently at the top or number one in the world of business podcasts. So when we talk with Tom, we're always getting a very measured approach to complex problems, which is what we need when we're discussing delivering difficult feedback. This is something that I always hear from clients, from people online, or you're just talking with other owners. Working with people is probably the most difficult part of working in coffee. And it gets more difficult when you've got hard things to say. And a lot of those hard things are because of the emotions wrapped up in the communication, and we'll either do it poorly or we won't do it at all. In either case, the end result is going to be not great. And so in this conversation, when we talked with Tom, we get a 4-step framework that will allow us to approach any difficult conversation we have with generosity, with charity, with respect. And we will know that we don't have to be scared of having discussions about things that might be hard. It's just part of life. It's part of working in a business, especially. And I just have always appreciated Tom's wisdom in these things. So I thought, let's bump this up to the top of your consciousness with an Encore episode this week. And I'm excited to see what you get from this. So without anything else from me, let's get right to that conversation with Tom Henschel. Tom, welcome back to Keys to the Shop. Happy to have you back in the podcast.
I'm thrilled to be back. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. You delivered such great information and insight in, it was episode 52, solving coworker conflict. Of course, that's always a relevant topic. So if any listeners have not listened to that episode, definitely give that a listen as a companion to this one. But I'm excited to talk about difficult feedback. Kind of a weird thing to be excited about. You know, it's difficult to feedback is something that we procrastinate on so much. And you've got so much experience through the years of executive coaching, through so many different personality types. And I mean, what's really behind our propensity to put off delivering difficult feedback? I mean, why is it so difficult?
Well, that's fascinating because I don't think it's the same for everybody. I think people have different relationships to feedback depending on the household they grew up in or their personal makeup. So, things that I hear often are, oh, I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. Oh, I don't want to sound bossy. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that people have, but what I think is important is that people understand their reason for resistance, avoidance, discomfort is their reason. And they're going to need to overcome that in order to be an effective manager. But it's very personal.
Yeah, it sounds like we bring our own resistance in, but then there's this. To me, it seems like there's a perceived threat, like what will happen, like forecasting what will happen when we drop the bomb on this person. At least maybe we think about it that way.
Is that how you think about feedback, is dropping the bomb on someone? Because if so, then if I thought I was dropping the bomb on you, I would be resistant too. I'm not trying to obliterate you, right? So one of the things when I come up against someone who's struggling to give feedback, I will often ask them to talk to me about times when they've gotten meaningful feedback. And people talk about all kinds of things, from sometimes a music teacher or a running coach or, from their aunt who taught them to cook or whatever. But when people get in touch with the fact that, yes, I have gotten feedback in my life that really was helpful and was long-lasting, or maybe from an early boss who said, that isn't the way we do things around here, and it stuck with them, that I think can help people get in touch with, well, why do I want to give feedback in the first place? I mean, yes, it's your job, but no, I'm not trying to drop a bomb on the person. I'm actually trying to help them. So I think that it's important to get clear about what's your intention. Why are you doing this? Because that, I think, usually when you get clear on your intention, it can help quiet that inner demon, but also just give you permission to remember, this is my job. It's my job to manage this place. And part of managing is giving feedback. So yeah, what's my intention here? My intention is to make it a safe workplace, make it a respectful workplace, make it whatever it is. So attached to intention can help overcome that difficult resistance.
As not a lot of us take the time to explore the intention behind our actions because we feel like we need to take action or just avoid it altogether because it's unpleasant to think about. And I feel like there's feedback that you can give people that you're comfortable with and that's relatively innocuous, put that here, not there. It's not going to rock somebody's world, at least not in your mind. Although I've been in situations where you can say something to someone that you feel is really simple and it turns out to not be so simple to them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that's part of what makes it sometimes feel like a minefield is, hey, look, I have good intentions, but that person's a whack job. I don't know how she's going to react to this because she can fly off the handle, and I don't want to be the recipient of her kind of, vomiting her emotions on me. And it's like, well, to which I go, I'm sorry, that's a drag. That's also an opportunity for feedback. And, it's like, that's your job. That's what you're getting paid for. And yes, it's a drag, but it doesn't give you permission to not deliver the feedback.
Well, what's at stake if you don't deliver the feedback?
Right. Well, that's a good question, right? Then your boss goes, what's wrong? Or, right, then you're suddenly looking ineffective, right? But it's your growth opportunity. The truth is, if you're going to manage people, and especially, by the way, if you want to move into any kind of leadership role, you have to give feedback, developing people, and that's what feedback is really about, right? It's about developing people. Developing people becomes your job. So, yeah, you're not trying to upset them. That's not your intention. You're not trying to drop a bomb on them. You're trying to develop them.
Yeah. And I guess by not doing it, you're robbing them of the opportunity to grow in their position and become better as a person.
Yes. Which I think is why it can be really helpful for you to connect in your own life when you've gotten feedback that might have been hard to hear in the moment, but transformed you. Because I think almost all of us who are on a success trajectory, we've had that moment where someone stepped in and said, hey, can I give you some feedback?
Yeah. I know I have, for sure.
Me too.
Even being offended at first, but looking back, it's one of the most cherished professional moments because of its being genuine and candid.
And it changed you, right, for the better. You grew because of it. You became more mature, more developed. And so you're grateful for that. I know I am.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah, wouldn't you like to be that for other people? Your intention isn't to hurt them. Your intention is to have that impact on them where 10 years from now, they're going to say, I had a great boss.
Yeah, that would be the dream for sure, to be that example that they look to when they're giving their TED Talk or whatever it is.
Right, yeah, wouldn't it?
I had a teacher, I had a manager. And that's true. I mean, in our industry, we have a lot of people that go in and out of our doors who are in a place in life as college students, a lot of young 20-somethings in barista roles who are impressionable and sensitive and looking for meaning, etc. And so because of that, it seems like, at least with feedback, you have the perfect opportunity. So when we go to give feedback, that is difficult in the sense that it might bring out emotions, bring out a charged situation, whether it's of our own making as managers or just purely something unavoidable that the employee brought upon themselves. You have a model that you like to use where we go step by step in a direction that brings clarity and formation to what could be a stressful situation. So I wonder if we could go over that here and talk about the what and the why of it.
Sure. It's really helpful. It's helpful sometimes to have some structure, like, oh, I have to give this feedback. Where do I start? So yeah, this has 4 parts to it. They don't necessarily have to go in this order, but these are things that you should be ready to talk about and should be very clear in your own mind. So I'm just going to label them first. I'm going to do all 4 of them just as labels, and then we can talk about each one. So number 1 is the situation. Number 2 is the behavior. Number 3 is the impact. And number 4 is what I call start, stop, continue. And that's a little format all by itself. I love start, stop, continue. So situation, behavior, impact, start, stop, continue. So the first two, situation and behavior, this is where I encourage people to say, in your mind, look at the videotape. Just look at what's happening. So the situation, what is it? Gee, this happens a lot when we get really busy. Or, gee, this happens a lot when you're in the back doing this one thing. Like, what's the situation? You need to help me understand if you're giving me the feedback, you need to help me understand where in my own videotape I should be paying attention. So if you just start giving me feedback like, sometimes I hear you be really you sound angry when you're talking to people. I'm going like, when I say good morning? Like, what are you talking about, right? But maybe it's when you're on the register and things are getting really busy. Like, that really helps me understand, it's not all the time. There's a specific situation where this happens. So that's number one, is what's the situation? Number two now is the behavior, where again, one of the things that I think is really important about giving good feedback is take all the judgment out of it. And we tend to have judgment. Like, she's an idiot. Doesn't she know she's screwing this up? What's wrong with her, right? That's what we think in our head. If you bring that to the table for the feedback conversation, it's not going to go well. No one wants to be called names. But when you just think of it as behavior, I notice that you don't make eye contact with people when you talk with them. You tend to look down at your hands on the counter. That's just behavior. I'm not saying you're an introvert. I'm not saying you're shy. I'm not calling it rude. I'm not name-calling or judging it in any way. It's just behavior. So those are the first two. Situation, behavior. Think of them like narrating a video. What does that sound like?
It's narration is a good term, and I love where we're going with this, because the internal dialogue that the one receiving the feedback is having is probably pretty loud by this point, if you've even broached the topic at all, usually to the negative side of things. Right.
So can I stepping away from the model for a minute, I'd like to address what you just pointed out, because I think this is really important, and I think this is one of the things that often creates a barrier, is when I say this to her, she's going to get all upset. And by the way, I'm not trying to pick women. It could be anybody, right? When I say this to him, he's going to get all upset. Listen, I don't think feedback should be a lecture. I think feedback should be a conversation. So I might start, not to set him up and not to make a trap out of this, but if my situation is when you're on the register and things are busy, there's more than like 4 or 5 people in line. If that's the situation, I might start by saying, hey, Chris, I'd really love to talk to you about when you're on the register and there's more than 4 or 5 people in line. How's that going for you? And let you go first. What do you know about that situation? Because you know what? Maybe you're going to go, I hate it. And then I go, oh, well, you know what? I could tell you hate it because I'm seeing this behavior, and now we're on the same page and you let me go there. So the idea is, I'm not going to lecture you. And if I see you're agitated, I can stop and say, it looks like this is upsetting for you, or it looks like you're having trouble listening to me, or you look upset right now. What's going on for you? My point here is I'm going to invite a two-way conversation all along, and I can stop anytime. So, for example, if I see that you're agitated because I'm starting to give you feedback and I haven't even given you the feedback yet, but I can see that you're upset, I could stop and say, hey, Chris, it looks like this is upsetting for you. Just tell me what's going on. And you're going to go, oh, no, nothing. And I'll say, well, look, I'm not trying to upset you. I do have some feedback for you, but I'm not trying to upset you. My intention here, and I'm going to tell you my intention here is to help you grow as a barista and to help our shop be successful. So my point is I'm going to invite two-way dialogue all along. This is not like me sitting down and fire hosing you with the speech that I prepared last night in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Which easily could happen because of that psyching yourself up part, where it all just comes blurting out because you want to get it over with as quickly as possible.
Right. So the point here that is not connected necessarily to that 4-part model is, you want this to be a conversation. It's not a lecture.
Mm-hmm. So after you've come up with the situation and you've kind of described that and detailed it and you're clear on your intention and describe the behavior, what follows after that? What does the communication of impact look like?
Great. So this third piece is the impact piece. This is, why does this matter? Why am I talking to you? So here I might get to talk about my intention. I might talk about my purpose. What I tend to ask people to stay away from is speaking for others. So I think it is often especially for younger managers, they think there is power in saying, everybody's upset about this, right?
Yes.
Or, a lot of people are talking to me about this. And I want to say that is not helpful in the feedback because it makes the other person crazy. They want to know who. And that's a completely natural response. And I want to say, don't go there. So when we're talking about impact, what we're going to talk about is any number of things. It's not how I like to see things done. It's not how we do things at this shop. It doesn't align up with how we want to treat others, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to say, you're upsetting people, now we're going to get into a debate of like, what do you mean I'm upsetting people? Who, right? You don't want to go there. Don't speak for others. Speak for yourself. Speak for the store. Speak for values. All of that is good. But don't put it on other people when you're talking about impact.
So I have a question for that. A lot of times a manager will be in a position of receiving feedback from others about somebody's behavior, where the one you have to give the feedback to now knows that you've never seen them do that behavior, but you have to address it nonetheless. How do you manage that situation where, would you say, wait until you see it yourself, or is there some way to just address it without having that scenario play out that you just described?
Well, this is interesting. I think it goes to a question of what kind of store do you want to run? So is this a store where you want to be the funnel for all the complaints about the work group and you have to kind of play whack-a-mole all the time? So, people are going to come to you and go, Janie's doing this, and people are going to come to you and say, Ron is doing that. And, oh my God, now I have to talk to Janie and I have to talk to Ron. Or when somebody comes and says, Janie's doing this thing, am I saying, what have you told Janie? You can talk to each other. I think peer feedback is the best.
Sure.
So it's like, I'd like to create a culture where it's like, you can give each other feedback. That's okay. Would you like me to be there when you do it? But in other words, do I have to report, hey, Janie, Bob is really upset with you? Like, why am I the triangle here? So I would suggest to people, if they can, get out of that role. It's not a helpful place to be. But if that's the culture that you're in, then yes, you're going to have to speak for others. But I want to suggest to you, I think it's a really awkward, difficult place to be. I would encourage you to get out of the triangle.
Good, yeah. And if questions come up about how to do that peer-to-peer, there's the Solving Coworker Conflict episode.
That's right. There is. That's right.
So we've... go ahead.
No. I was going exactly where you are. So we've done the first three, talked about the situation, talked about the behavior. Now I've told you why it's important. And now I get to tell you, what do I want you to do? Now's the action step. And I love this idea, start, stop, continue. I want to tell you, I got given this model, the start, stop, continue model, years and years and years ago, and it just made my life so much easier. It's really simple. What do I want you to start doing that you're not doing yet? What do I want you to stop doing that you are currently doing? And what do I want to be sure that you continue doing because it's really good? My job as a manager is to give you all three of those in regular doses all the time. In other words, I want to be clear. I would not do one big sit down and give you all three, but that over the course of a day, a week, a shift, I might give you little drops of each one of those. So if I'm going to talk to you about this issue of you not making eye contact at the register, I'm going to tell you the situation. I'm going to tell you the behavior. I'm going to tell you the impact. Like, I'm concerned that it doesn't make our guests feel welcome. So what I'd like you to start doing, now I get to start, stop, continue. So I get to say, so what I'd like you to start doing, Chris, I'd like you to start people in the eyes when you talk to them. And that's it. I'm done. That's it. I just gave you an action plan, and now I can revisit. Hey, I noticed you, do you remember that woman in that pink sweater? I noticed you looked at her when you talked to her. That looked really different. Good job.
That's good. Yeah. I love the constant communication over, the course of days and weeks. It just is one of those things that, I am a big advocate for, because we do kind of tend to put everything into one meeting where we want to get it over with. And
right.
Giving them the continue also is great, because it makes them feel like at least you're recognizing the positive things that they're doing at work.
Yes. And I want to tell you for myself, it took me time to learn to look for the continue. In other words, to look for strengths, look for good performance. I think we tend to not notice the things that don't bother us.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I had to learn to look and go, I have to start with 3 positives and to find them before I could do anything else.
Yeah. We were cultivating that relationship, to be a positive one. This sounds like once they hear something from you, they're going to trust whatever hard feedback you give them, because they associate you with positivity.
Yes, right. And that every time I open my mouth and say something to you, I'm not just nagging at you, and I'm not a scold and just kind of telling you what you're doing wrong, that I see you in a whole person way. I see what you're doing well, and I see places for you to improve, and I'm going to tell you both. That's my job. Excellent.
But it sounds pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So I feel like, this, depending on the situation, just keeping this at the front of your mind all the time and really absorbing it and taking ownership of it. It'll take some time, I suppose, to switch from the way that you do things now to this new way. But I think one of the things that was helpful in the last podcast where you were a guest was the role playing. And got a few situations here that I've written out that might be just kind of usual situations a manager might find themselves in when having to deliver difficult feedback. So I suppose we can just play it out.
It would be great. I think it's wonderful to hear, and sure. And I love the scenarios because they feel very real. So sure, you want to pick one and jump in?
Yeah, and they are real. And I've definitely experienced some form of these throughout my time in coffee. So let's pick one. So the first one, I'll just read the scenario. You're a manager who needs to talk with a barista who, despite their upbeat personality, is not pulling their weight at work. It's clear that the employee believes that they are pulling their weight, or at least they're oblivious to it, the other extreme there. But the frustration from the staff and the behaviors you have observed paint a different picture.
Great. So there seems to be a kind of gap between what I think and what other people think. So you want to be the manager, I'll be the barista. You want to try giving me some feedback?
Sure, let's see how I do.
Great.
So, Tom, I wanted to just talk to you about something real quick that I've noticed as we've been working together the last couple of days. Do you have a second?
Yeah, sure.
First of all, as I've told you before, I think that I could learn a lot from your way with customers, and just your positivity is inspirational. I think it's an asset to the group. I wanted to bring up something that might be difficult to hear, but I don't think that it has an impact on the way I think about you or the work you do. but a lot of work is getting left to other people that I've noticed. So not very many things have your initials next to them on the checklist. I think maybe you're engaging with customers a little bit too long. Potentially, we might work out what the cause of it is. But have you noticed that? Is that something that you are aware of that you're working on?
So let's just stop for a sec before we go too deep. How do you think that was? What do you think of that, Chris?
I gave a lot of warm up, like this is going to be painful talk. Naturally, I think it maybe put them in a place of stress.
Well, I don't think you did a lot of it, but you did one. You certainly suggested to me that this might be difficult to hear. And so, of course, needless to say, I would go like, oh my God, what's happening? Tell me too what you think about this idea of like, oh, I could learn a lot from you about your people skills. You're kind of prefacing it. It sounds like you're trying to balance things. Am I right?
I am trying to balance things just to let them know that there's, things about what they do that I wanted to reinforce that I think are positive.
So I've got a mixed feeling about that. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, I think if you don't talk to your people very often, it may be important. It may be important that you balance it. But I often call it a kiss slap. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you a kiss, but after the kiss, I'm going to slap you. And what ends up happening is people don't actually take in the kiss because they know something bad is coming after it. So one of the things I would wonder is, has that person heard from you multiple times about their gift with people? Because if they have, then you can dispose of it in like a couple words. I think you're great with people. This isn't about that. This is about something else, right? But they know that because you've already been telling them, like, that's a continuum. That, right? If they've already heard it. So I'm torn about this kiss slap. Yeah. Partly because I think both get diminished.
It was funny, while I was saying it, I knew what I was doing, and it was too late to stop myself from saying it. It was because I knew, like, I don't want the crap sandwich.
Right.
and I've told people before, like, don't do that. And yet it seemed like a magnetic pull, like being uncomfortable with delivering it made me feel like I needed to say it, even though technically I knew that that's not what you're supposed to say.
Great. And listen, the truth is you and I don't know, our history, and have I heard that from you 100 times? If we have, then it's all good. Then it's not a crap sandwich, right? But it's only if you haven't given me any feedback in 3 months, then it's like, okay, yeah, then I'm going to get a crap sandwich. So the other thing that I think was helpful was that you got specific about like initials on the chart. That's a very measurable thing. We could go look at that together. And then you asked my opinion. And so I thought that was great. So the piece that I would take out, if we could go back and edit it, would be the suggestion that I'm going to have a hard time hearing this. Because I think that's more about you than about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And why would you plant that in my mind? But if we took that out, that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. No, it wasn't, right? It's pretty specific. I know what the measurements are. Things on the, initials on the chart. It's like, okay. And we could have a conversation about that. So I thought that was pretty nice. It goes to that idea, where you ended, Chris, which was my invitation to speak and to tell my version of the story, goes to that idea of the two-way communication, right? And especially true if you believe that I have a gap in how I perceive myself, right? That everyone else seems to think I'm not pulling my weight around those things, but I think I am. You want to hear about that. And so you invited that, and I think that's going to be really important, that you listen to my version of the story, because that's going to tell you where I need to fix my thinking.
Mm. Well, I want your opinion on something, because in my style of management, a lot of times, I don't think, in this example, I don't think I've said in meetings that this is going to be difficult to hear, but Maybe because I've had a rapport with some people that is less formal and went over the top and sort of in a joking way made it humorous about why we were talking, as if it wasn't a big deal. Like, hey, I got some earth-shattering information I want to share with you, or something, really grandiose, but that they know it's just like, I'm not taking it at super seriously, but it's still serious enough that we're talking. What do you think about that?
Well, it sounds to me like it becomes one more little data point in an ongoing conversation. In which case I go, that's great, right? That's what we want, is like, feedback. If I'm the manager, feedback from me to you is constant. You're going to get it every day that we're working together. I'm going to tell you something, start, stop, or continue, and it's going to be just ongoing. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a big sit-down conversation. So I think that sounds great.
Yeah, keep it pleasant, upbeat, and direct. Doesn't have to be long.
No, right. And I do want to hear how you think of this thing. Now, look, the truth of the matter is the scenario that you picked sounds really important. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's gone on for a while. It sounds like other people are upset about it. It sounds like you have enough information that you think I'm oblivious. Like, there's a lot of history here, to which I go, then this might take more than 5 minutes, because it sounds like we're starting from zero on this one. Yeah. We don't have a lot of foundation, to which I go, well, then you got to start. And starting the conversation. But think of it this way. It's not an event. I'm not going to kind of fire hose you and think it's all fixed and tomorrow you're going to be perfect. That's just not realistic. But if I think of it as this is the first conversation in an ongoing process, and I could even say that to you, that helps it for both of us not be so fraught.
Yeah, and you better deliver on that too. Be ready to put in the work to follow up and truly coach from consistency point of view. Or else they'll call your bluff.
Right. Well, but that on next Thursday I say, hey, I saw your initials 3 times on that sheet. That's so much better than last week. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that's it. It's 3 sentences and that's all I need to say.
And it's so easy to forget to look at that list, even though that person is taking that information. If you took that information that I gave you and said, okay, I'm going to do better, and you did better, but I've never seen you do better, even though you have been, it's why change? It really is demoralizing, actually.
Yeah, right. That's right. If I'm going to have the conversation, I'm taking on your development. I am your coach at that point, and I need to keep track of it. That's right. That's part of my job. It's what I do.
I have another scenario here, and I think it's something that we find a lot in coffee shops where management might be in a position of having some gaps in communication with standards, and baristas see fit to fill in the blanks for themselves without talking about it. So let me read the situation and see where we can go with this, because I think everyone will find this pretty familiar. Here we go. So it's come to your attention that a staff member is taking initiative in areas that are not theirs to take. The employee means well, but their actions assume an authority that has not been officially given to them and is rubbing people the wrong way, including you. You want to reward the initiative generally, but also need to make sure they understand their boundaries.
Great. I love this one. This is great. So you want to go first?
Sure. Do you want to be the employee in this one again?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, sure.
So, Tom, do you have a second to talk real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, first of all, I just wanted to say that you are taking a lot of initiative in areas that I really value. Yeah, but at the same time, there are some things that I see you doing that where I know you mean well, aren't actually, they're not really as helpful, I think, as you think they are. And I want to talk over specifically what those things are and what I would like from you when it comes, time for you to decide to, take that initiative again.
Okay. So let me just stop. Good opening gambit. good opening gambit.
So I learned from the last one, Tom.
Yeah. May I give you some feedback?
Yeah.
There's one tiny, tiny little thing I'd like to address. It's very small, and it makes an enormous difference. So you said something like this. Hey, listen, Tom, I see you taking initiative, and I think that's great, but there's some other things that may not be yours to do, or whatever. The word but has been proven to do something in our brains, neurologically. It agitates us. And, talking about the kiss slap again, it completely negates everything that went before. So if you spend, 6 minutes telling me how fantastic I am at this and how fantastic I am at that, and everybody loves this and everybody loves that, but when I hear but, nothing happened, and I have an agitated response.
What should I do instead?
And it changes everything. When you think that there's an and instead of a but, it's really interesting. And you have to change your thinking a little, which is they are equal to each other. This is somebody who has a lot of initiative, and they're not doing the right things. Huh. Doesn't that sound different?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So even in your own head, to start taking the but out and putting and in its place, I think makes you think of situations differently. Now, can I take a shot at this?
Oh, sure.
So I see this. You tell me whether you think this is what you think of this. So I'm going to take a shot at this. Hey, Chris, do you have a minute?
Sure.
Great, thanks. Listen, I want to tell you, I think you know this. I hope you've heard me say this before. You have so much initiative. I am so pleased. It's so great. Thank you for all that initiative. I've been watching you, and it makes me think, I haven't done something well with you. I think maybe I have not been very clear with you on your roles and responsibilities. The reason I'm saying that is because there's some things that you do that are frankly just outside your roles and responsibilities. They're not yours to do. And so there's confusion. And I take full responsibility for this. It's my job to teach you your job. So I wonder if we could have a little conversation about what is and isn't yours.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's have a conversation.
Great. Now, time out. Do you really think you would kind of go, yeah, great, let's have a conversation? I mean, or was there anything in there that I said that might agitate you or make you fearful or?
I think maybe inevitably there's going to be some fear involved because I'm going to have to look back at what I've been doing and know that it has not been the right thing. So there's going to be some pride to deal with. I imagine that's unavoidable.
And are you willing to take on the idea that, in fact, your manager didn't teach you the job right? That it's not your fault? Because that's, by the way, what I think is going on here. If somebody's working outside their scope, it's got to be the manager's problem, doesn't it?
I would imagine that they would have no problem acknowledging that the manager dropped the ball. I think that's the default position for most baristas anyway, is to look at leadership in a suspicious way and guilty until proven innocent.
So look, if I step up as the manager and say, hey, I take responsibility for this. This is not your fault. I didn't teach you well, but I'm going to teach you now. I don't know. I think now it is a feedback conversation, but I'm taking the responsibility for it. And in some ways, I think it's legit.
Yeah, I agree. And that's great to, you're taking the responsibility to initiate and to fix the problem rather than just dropping it into the lap of the person to fix on their own, which is how they got in that position to begin with, assuming.
There's, one of the problems that I think we have as human beings, I think this is inevitable, is we think that people think like we think. We think people are like us. So we say things if we're talking about Barbara, you and I say, wouldn't you think she'd know better? And that's a real thought that people have about a third person. Wouldn't you think she'd know better? To which I go, why would she? She grew up in a different house, probably different socioeconomic, different whatever. She came up through a whole different kind of different rules. Why would she know, quote, better? Like your way is better and she's doing it wrong? She's just doing it her way. And I think the gap is that we forget people are trying to do their best. And then it's a learning issue. Like they didn't hear us or whatever. Or maybe they're slow to learn that part of their job. If it's their first time, they probably had 600 things they were supposed to learn and they didn't learn 20 of them. Well, that's not that surprising, right? Mm-hmm. So your job's not done and you still have to give feedback, whatever. But to not see it as they're doing it wrong, but like, hey, can I teach you something? I want to be clear what I'm trying to teach you here. Can I just teach you this thing?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you said a second ago, there's 600 things and you maybe didn't learn 20 of them. That would be something I would tell somebody to say, this job, there's a ton of minutia that you will drop balls, and we're going to talk about that as it happens. Everything, if, you start them off in the onboarding process by communicating expectations that you were not going to do this job perfectly. So don't try necessarily to be perfect in all aspects, but be open to learning. Then when the time comes to talk to them, it seems like you can harken back to that time that, hey, remember when I talked about how we're all dropping balls sometimes, that it happens? Well, we're going to talk about that now.
And there again, this is an echo of something you and I've already talked about and it's my job to watch and to give feedback all the time, right? That's my job I know you're not going to do well. So part of, I think, what's helpful for the manager to get over this difficulty around giving feedback is to understand that feedback's inevitable. It's your job. And it's inevitable that they're not going to be doing their jobs right. They're not victimizing you by making you give them feedback. They're not trying to make your life difficult by the fact that you have to give them feedback. It's just what happens. This is normal.
It's an expected part of the culture, and if they know that from the beginning, then there's no surprises. And I feel like that word surprise is probably what brings the most terror to people in any position in the company when they're surprised by something. It's embarrassing. It's whatever.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, if I've been on the job for, 8 weeks and I have not gotten any feedback and suddenly in the 9th week I'm getting all this feedback, that feels like a surprise to me. Mm-hmm. Or lay that out to 6 months and I haven't gotten any feedback and suddenly I'm getting all this feedback, that feels like a surprise. It's uncomfortable. It feels like an attack. It's like, why didn't you tell me? Like, what? Why am I getting all this right now? Right now I'm defensive and I think you're a crappy manager. Like, why are you doing this to me? But if, I'm day 2 on the job and you're already giving me start, stop, continue, and it's just little stuff, then it's just the norm. And I might be overwhelmed and it might be hard to hear in the beginning, but it's the norm. I get this from my manager all the time. My manager does it because my manager wants me to be good.
Yeah. Amen. That it avoids, by doing that, the consistency will eliminate some potential landmines in the future for sure. And just the same, I think, as you're saying, look, tell the barista, tell the employee, you're not going to get it right. You're going to fail. And that's what the process of learning is all about. I mean, the same is true for anyone listening to this who's in a management position, especially new managers, where it's like you're not going to have these conversations right. I mean, after so many years of leadership in coffee, I'm just magnetically drawn to give the whole, like you called kiss slap talk. It's just like somehow there in my genes, and it just comes out and we make mistakes. And you should give yourself the kind of grace that you would give an employee too.
Yes. Isn't that the truth? And I think feedback is one of those areas where you can be doing it for years and years and years, and there's no finish line. You can always be doing it a little better. I mean, listen, just trying to eliminate the word but is a challenge. Just that. If people worked on that for a year, it's hard. It's amazing. It's hard to do.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time eliminating the uhs out of my speech during podcasts.
Right. Yes.
Well, so now that we've got these tools and we've got kind of a taste of some how-to, what is the next step, in your opinion, if you are talking to a manager, which you technically are here, lots of them that want to take the next step and make this a part of the way that they give feedback? What's your advice to them?
Well, let me say two things. Number one is don't shoot from the hip. Be thoughtful. That's the first one, which is plan it out. Think about it in the shower. Think about it on your drive into work. Or think about it today and observe that person and do it tomorrow. Don't do it in the flush of the moment. Feedback is always better. Look, everything's always better once you get a chance to rehearse. Everything is better, right? I mean, that's why cops rehearse scenarios and firefighters rehearse with fire and all that. Like, giving feedback can feel a little bit like juggling hand grenades. Be thoughtful. Be planful. And when you're planning and being thoughtful, think about what's the situation, what's the behavior, what's the impact, like why am I doing this, and what do I want them to start or stop or continue. So think about that. Then here's the second thing. Come at it with the intention to help. You and I've talked this whole last few minutes about learning and teaching. So whatever emotion you are bringing to the table, be aware of it. I'm not saying you're going to turn your emotions off, but don't let that rule you. You're actually trying to be emotion-free here, both for you and for them. So try to unplug, get rid of judging words, get rid of judging attitude, get rid of the language that name calls, things like rude. That was rude what you did to that person. No, it wasn't. Rudeness is subjective. I'm sorry, you can't prove rude to me, right? So getting rid of words like that, taking the emotion out of it, that's the second piece that will help for both you and the receiver.
Fantastic. This has been just rich with practical stuff for our benefit as managers to just put into practice. So thank you for this, and thank you for your time and wisdom here. You have a ton more information just like this. When I say a ton, that's capital T. There's just so much in your podcast and at your work in consulting. So how can we stay in touch with you and also kind of dive into what more you have to offer through your work with the podcast and coaching?
Sure. And there are a lot of free resources. So let me start by saying the company I run is called Essential Communications. Our website is essentialcom with 2 M's.com. When you're there, you can click on the Coaching Tips tab and go into an archive of, 13 years worth of executive coaching tips. And there's an entire section called feedback. So you can search and sort the entire archive by feedback. And I have been writing about feedback and doing podcasts about feedback for years. Mm-hmm. The podcast is called The Look and Sound of Leadership. So yeah, go help yourself. There's lots there and it's all for free.
So amazing. I definitely recommend everybody subscribe to that podcast. Kind of a short format, average about 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes. And it's just chock full of great scenarios and wisdom. So thank you again, Tom. This was fantastic. I'm so happy to have had you back on the show.
And I'm glad to be back. It's great to talk to you, Chris. Thanks.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. The ideas here are so powerful. You can find the PDF that Tom has made available for the Keys to the Shop audience outlining these frameworks by clicking on the link in the show notes. So you can just download that there. And I would encourage you to listen to Tom's other episodes on the show. That's linked in the show notes as well. And of course, you should be subscribed to the Look and Sound of Leadership podcast, as well as checking out his website, essentialcom with 2 M's.com. And so one of the things that I would say is foundational to the business, your business, anyone's business, is the structure of communication. This is just an example of the kind of approach to communication that you need to be curious about in every area of your business. we'll often spend a lot of time thinking about where the espresso machine goes, where the grinder goes, and we will structure our business, physical business, our finances, our equipment, the furniture, everything is designed, but we don't really design communication. And there's a part of us that feels like maybe designing communication is the antithesis of communication. Like it's against, isn't communication supposed to be something that's organic and it just kind of happens? And it's just not the case in a business. You need some safeguards. We all know that fighting fires just comes with the territory. And if you don't protect your time around the needed areas of communication and structures of communication, then they tend to be the first things to go, and we fall prey to shiny object syndrome or whatever fire is being that needs to get put out. And before you know it, we're not having our one-on-ones, we're communicating tersely with people, we're just letting it all go because there's no standard that we've really dug into and established for our business. So let this conversation with Tom be the catalyst for something bigger for your business. Start here and then grow it and make it unique to your coffee shop and its needs and the people in it. And I think you're really going to find a lot of benefit from that. So thank you all again. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback from me about today's episode, you can always email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. It's also where you can reach out for Keys to the Shop consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, you can also find a lot of great tips from coffee professionals and other owners just like yourself at a place called Coffee Fest. Coffee Fest has been going on for 30 years, and over those 3 decades, they've provided not only a great trade show that allows you access to the best vendors in the industry to stock your coffee shop with the best stuff, but they also have such a great educational program that gives you free and accessibly priced lectures, trainings, workshops, panel discussions, things that will really enrich your mind and your business, energize your team. And I go every year to every show and I present. I'm a head judge at the Coffee Fest Latte Art World Championship Open. And you can find me there if you're there. And I really want you to be there. So you can get 50% off your registration by going and using the code KEYS when you register yourself and your team. It's KEYS for 50% off registration for upcoming shows in 2023. Check them out over at coffeefest.com. And if you're there, please do say hello. Again, if you're looking for the best event to go to for coffee retailers, then you definitely need to be going to Coffee Fest. Go check them out, coffeefest.com. And with that, that is the end of our episode, everybody. I appreciate all of you so much. I want you to know that. And listening to the show, sharing the show, and subscribing, of course, and just the notes that you send, the emails, letting me know that, this show has been meaningful to you over the years. It really goes a long way to keep me energized and motivated, as we produce episodes. And, life doesn't stop because I, run a podcast. Those of you who have left reviews and have sent kind notes, just know that those things really go a long way. So thanks everybody again. Have a great day. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.